Jerry Sandusky was arrested Saturday on 40 counts of child sexual abuse after a 3-year grand jury investigation.
Joe Paterno is no longer the head football coach.
The most powerful men at Penn State failed to take any steps for 14 years to protect the children who Sandusky victimized.
To use a cliche, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
There was a culture of reverence for the football program.
I think the NCAA should give Penn State the death penalty. Everybody needs to be wiped out.
President Graham Spanier and Vice President Gary Schultz and Athletic Director Tim Gurley and Head Coach Joe Paterno, they're just as morally culpable as Jerry Sandusky. It makes me angry that everyone is out there still trying to protect this university and this head coach.
It's time to stop the dour attitude. We've got to move the university, the athletic department, and the football team forward.
45% of the American people were under the impression Joe Paterno might have been a child molester.
Joe Pa could have done more. It's sad, it's a terrible situation, but he should have done more.
That is the Joe Paterno statue being removed from outside Beaver Stadium, taken away on a forklift under blankets and shrink wrap. Took a long time to jackhammer that 900-pound statue out of there. The statue was taken inside Beaver Stadium. No determination as to where that statue's final resting place will be.
One thing that's important to understand about a state college, that it's a very small town. In terms of permanent residents, I don't know the exact numbers, but we're talking about maybe 20, 30,000 people, permanent residents. Everybody knows everybody.
When we drove in on Route 45, where there are a lot of the old Pennsylvania homes, I said, this is really pretty, this is really nice.
The beauty, the foliage, the mountains here, it's captivating.
It's like a self-contained, joyful spirit.
I mean, no one ever really wants to leave Happy Valley because it's kind of the greatest place in the world.
This place is gorgeous. It's utopia. I mean, how could you not sell a kid, and how can a kid not want to come to Penn State?
My first impression was that it was cold. I mean, I remember being cold when I visited there when I was about 8 years old, and then my official visit was only like the second or third time I'd ever seen snow in my life, and I remember being cold.
Football in this town, it brings people together. cannot deny that. It brings over 100,000 people together 6, 7, 8 times on Saturdays.
Football Saturdays for Penn State has a tremendous impact. The community leans on it, everyone likes to win, and a lot of people from an economic standpoint rely on the fact that there's 100,000, 110,000 people in that stadium every weekend.
The economy is so dominated by one employer, one mission, and we get lost.
When I was a young lad, we, as children, would gather outside the gate where the ball players entered the field. As they ran out onto the field, running through the gates would pick us up, carry us physically through that gate, and drop us off so we could get in free. We didn't have any money. So the ball players, they loved us as kids, you know. And these big guys, 250, picking us up, running us through the gate. So you're talking about Penn State football? That was a way of life.
You ask anybody, the catalyst to success in Happy Valley, and the guy who did the heavy lifting is one man named Joe Paterno.
There was no football coach in America who was as involved as Joe Paterno in advancing the university academically.
Joe Paterno epitomized the ideals of the university. I mean, he was building character.
Joe Paterno, the man, I think, is what brought me to the university.
The aura around him was just, it really is a larger-than-life figure.
Take off now, let's go, bro. Concentrate. Get back in the huddle. Come on, Eddie, be tough out there now. And then you go from there, you got it? Don't be in a hurry to throw your hands. Get your feet up under you, stick your nose on that guy, and knock him on his rear end.
Here's a man who, started very humbly and lived very humbly. He lives in the same house on the end of that street that he did when he started.
His life was very simple. He walked to work. It's just like, when you're in the middle of a project or, in a negotiation or something, you clear your head by taking a walk. Joe cleared his head by walking, and part of what he did when he walked, he realized where he was. He wasn't in a athletic citadel off to the side. It reminded him that he was part of a campus and he was part of young people's lives.
The reason he continued to coach as long as he did was not because he loved being at the football games, doing what coaches do, but it gave him a window onto the rest of the world. It gave him a platform for advancing the university in other ways.
Academically, he was on your case all the time.
It didn't matter what their background was, what color they were, whatever. And some people come from some tough backgrounds that, didn't have very much. But he had the same expectation. You go to class and you graduate.
And that's what the grand experiment was, that you can run a big-time football program at a large university, and kids can graduate, kids can have a college experience.
I just think that a kid who comes to college, you ought to belong at the college. He ought to be able to do what he wants to do academically, and athletics ought to be kind of an extracurricular activity. But it shouldn't interfere to the extent that his academic life suffers or his social life suffers, where he doesn't have an opportunity to meet other people and get other interests.
Joe demanded excellence, demanded that you go to class. He said that if you don't go to class, you're not going to play. in a team meeting. He turned and looked at me, singled me out in the meeting room. Yeah, we got to think about haircuts, and Harry, your hair is getting long too. My first reaction was, how would you know?
He was a patriarch to more than 20,000 kids who were up here every 4 years. He was Joe Pa.
In Pennsylvania, Penn State is it. There's nothing else but Penn State. I remember the first time I saw a game, I was like just absolutely overwhelmed by the excitement and the pageantry. I call it a pilgrimage. Even as a young kid, it just reminded me of a religious pilgrimage.
This is a place that's been really safe to raise kids. There's not a lot of crime.
People know each other, or if they don't know each other, they know somebody who knows somebody. It's been a wonderful community to raise my own kids. It's been a place that they've grown up and been well cared for.
It's almost sort of a storybook location, but it's not without the big bad wolf.
I'm going to turn this thing over to Jerry Sandusky now, who will start out talking to you about the things we think are vital in linebacking play.
As a position coach, you play a very important role in the development of a football team. More importantly, you play a vital role in the development of young people. You're there daily. You're their mentor, their teacher, their coach, their friend.
Jerry Sandusky was famous nationally, and on top of that was seen locally as a really good person.
He was an outstanding coach. I worked with him for 5 years. I helped recruit ball players with him for Penn State.
It wasn't long after I got here that I learned about the second mile.
He was the head of a charity. He was respected. The state agency that was giving him children to adopt and foster over the years trusted him.
You're going to slide your hands to the outside of your knees. So just slide your hands out.
He established this big charity, ostensibly to serve kids, incorporating kids' idols, football players, into reaching out and giving attention to kids who were at risk in some way. I was working with a family and seeing a boy of about 11, and his mom called me one morning after her son had spent time with Jerry Sandusky the night before. She specifically said, "I'm calling so you can tell me I'm crazy." I heard things that sounded very much like pedophile grooming to me. Behavior that the child was uncomfortable with and Sandusky was insensitive to. Jerry Sandusky was an exciting, well-known character, a celebrity in this town. The last thing the child wanted to think was that anything was wrong. He even said, you know, he couldn't have meant anything by it. He's married.
You have to be loyal to the players. They're the only ones that you have. They want to do well. They want to succeed. So you must stay loyal to them.
If you look at the 5 days between the morning of November 5th, when the Sandusky indictment hit the papers, and Wednesday night, there was absolute silence from the administration and from Old Main.
Well, you know, our first responsibility is to protect ourselves. As a trustee, I believe what goes on in that room, if it isn't open to the public, should be private.
That executive committee, they run the whole university. They don't answer to anybody.
And the mystery, and people love a mystery, was building up. What happened? Who's responsible here? So that by Monday and Tuesday, there were 500 journalists looking for answers with this huge mystery that no one was responding to.
On that Saturday in early November, I called an emergency meeting of the Board of Trustees. I laid out for them everything that I knew about the situation and asked them to give me the opportunity to get out in front of this because I knew it was going to be a pretty bad scene. But in this case, they decided that the trustees wanted to manage this themselves. As the week unfolded, it became clear to me that I was going to be helpless.
And they never provided any answers. They never held a press conference to say, okay, what happened? And they canceled Joe Paterno's press conference, at which he could have explained.
When I met with the vice chair of the board, John Surma told me that I needed to cancel Joe Paterno's press conference.
This press conference cannot be held and will not be rescheduled.
I was hoping I was going to be able to answer them today, but we'll try to do it as soon as we can.
The media obviously descended on this town, thousands of them.
The media were rushing in by the scores, and I'm not exaggerating, scores.
Penn State has always felt like its own little world to me. But in November, it was almost a different kind of world. It was seriously I felt like I was on a different planet.
The mainstream media narrative here can fit in a tweet in 140 characters. Mike McQuarrie saw a rape, told Joe Paterno about it. Joe Paterno did nothing about it and then covered it up. That's the media narrative. Well, none of that is true. We now know that almost every single bit of that narrative is either partially or completely, totally false.
I spoke to Mike McQuarrie, and I asked him, did you see anal rape? He said no. I said, did you see sodomy? He said no. I said, did you see anybody with an erection? He said, I didn't look.
We kind of watched as the world watched. You know, I mean, we were in our apartment. Everybody would gather around the TV, like, hey, let's find out what's going to happen to us. You know, we were kind of just watching our own fate. You know, maybe Monday or Tuesday we started hearing rumblings of, you know, Joe's going to get fired. You know, there's something really bad coming out.
his son denying reports in the New York Times that his father is about to be fired.
There's been no contact about anything to do with anybody stepping down. That's all we have really at this time.
I think there's absolutely, unequivocally no way that he can coach on Saturday.
Joe's going to come out on the field and 100,000 people are going to cheer for him. I wonder how the victims will feel at that particular moment.
Letting this guy resign on his own terms at the end of the year is not going to send the right message.
Joe Pa is a fucking scumbag. I love that nickname, Joe Pa, like he's the big dad.
Yeah, he's the worst Pa ever.
What kind of person knows about the abuse of children and does not do everything to stop it?
Joe Paterno was in the best position to stop what was not stopped.
This is all about pride and greed to keep the money rolling in.
It's a matter of human decency. I think he should be immediately fired.
Joe must go.
When you hook a fish and he is struggling for his life, other fish will take that stress signal and disappear. They will run for covers. And so that's why, basically, if you are fishing and hook a fish, you want to get him out of that area where there are other fish as quickly as possible and land him in another area, or quickly, so that you're not going to stress all of the other fish.
Can everyone hear me? The Penn State Board of Trustees tonight decided that it is in the best interests of the university to have a change in leadership to deal with the difficult issues that we are facing. The Board of Trustees and Graham Spanier have decided that effective immediately, Dr. Spanier is no longer president of the university. In addition, Joe Paterno is no longer the head football coach. Effective immediately. These decisions were made after careful deliberations and in the best interests of the university as a whole. Penn State has always strived.
He's like, don't worry about this, guys. I mean, just till his last day, I guess, or his last minute of his career, he's telling us, don't worry about this stuff. Take care of each other. You know, that's kind of his last message to us. And you know, I'll never forget that. You know, I don't think there was a dry eye in the room at that point.
You've had all kinds of problems. People have berated you. They've acted like we didn't have any guts, like we weren't a good football team. You've overcome everything with poise and determination, and you've stuck together. If I live to be 1,000, I'll never forget any of you. I'm going to miss you.
I've had a wonderful experience at Penn State. I don't want to walk away from this thing bitter. I don't think I deviated from what I'm all about and what I thought was important.
I can't imagine what went on in his mind. This is probably one of the best men you'll ever see. Had to go through that. Bastards.
I was right by him, holding his hand, kissed his forehead. It was tough. It was tough to watch his family. He's got that lasting presence.
God bless you. Look, we've got a prayer to say because the good Lord has been so good to all of you. One thing, fellas, when you say your prayer, remember, He's given you so many good friends. You guys, 25, 30 years from now, as I've said to you many times, you remember these days and the friends you made and the associations, and you've been lucky to have the friends you have. So let's say our Father and tell Him how much we appreciate everything. Let's go. Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done
on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
The Lord's Prayer was taught to us very young and is very important to us because we believe it was a prayer that Jesus taught. It was a model prayer that He says, pray like this.
When I don't forgive others for what they have done, then I cannot expect God's forgiveness on my life.
The Amish have a very sincerely held religious belief in the Lord's Prayer. And the specific phrase in the Lord's Prayer that says, forgive us for our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
It was a beautiful day, just the most gorgeous fall day you could imagine. And as I sat on the patio with my friend having lunch, we heard sirens. We heard helicopters. And whenever I hear ambulance sirens, I just issue a short prayer. Dear Lord, be with the person that needs that ambulance. Be with the responders, that they will give them the care that they need. We went back to the office and my phone was ringing. And it was a call from my husband. He asked me to come to Charlie's house right away. I got into the car, turned on the radio, and heard the news that there had been a shooting at the local nickel mine Amish school.
The Amish have one-room schools, and these are children from first grade to 8th grade, 6, 7 years of age to 13 years of age.
And then I heard the name on the radio of the perpetrator. The name was Roy. So immediately I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what if Charlie was helping with a rescue? What if he was shot? What if he was killed?
We have identified the suspect. We have a positive ID on him. His name is Charles Carl Roberts IV.
Charles Roberts came into an Amish schoolhouse that had about 28 pupils in it, backed his truck up. He had several weapons, a lot of ammunition. He had paraphernalia that he could sexually assault someone, we don't know for sure who, as well as supplies, indicating he intended to barricade himself into the schoolhouse, perhaps for several days.
The state trooper and my husband are standing in my son's driveway. As I got out of the car, I looked at the trooper and I said, "Is my son alive?" His response was, "No, ma'am." Then I looked at my husband. He said it was Charlie.
He ordered everybody on the floor. He dismissed the other adults plus all the boys and held the 10 girls hostage. He had them face forward on the floor at the front of this one-room schoolroom at the blackboard. He tied their ankles together, called 911 on his cell phone and said, "I'm going to start shooting in a couple seconds if the police don't leave." And soon after that, he did start shooting execution style with an automatic pistol into the backs of these girls who were lying side by side, 10 of them, at the front of the room. When the police heard him starting to shoot, they came in, and then when he saw they were going to come in, he shot himself and killed himself.
No, this cannot be true. This is not my son with a wonderful wife and 3 children. This cannot be.
It's really hard to say how bad it hurts. You know, you can't really express the depth of pain it brought.
There was anger. You can't function right, or sleep at night. My human nature is to think of things that I could do to maybe get even with this person.
Amish people are human beings. They have anger. They have feelings of hostility and bitterness. There was sorrow. There was deep pain. There were many tears shed, and still are shed in Amish homes who lost their daughters.
I mean, I think of those Amish dads and what that must have been like for them. There's nothing a father wants to do more than to protect his daughter.
When there's a loved one killed by some careless act, that's very difficult to lay down and forgive. It seems almost hopeless because the person killed himself, and what can you do for him?
When do I know I have forgiven someone? Once we can truly from our heart ask God to bless this person. And we have this voice that tells us, "You mean the one that hurt you so badly? Yes, Lord, I'm asking you to bless him."
Our most saddening and sobering finding is the total disregard for the safety and welfare of Sandusky's child victims by the most senior leaders at Penn State. The most powerful men at Penn State failed to take any steps for 14 years to protect the children who Sandusky victimized.
You have to realize that first and foremost, it's a third-party report paid by someone. It's not like federal investigators, conducted these interviews. The Board of Trustees paid the Free Group.
They appoint Louis Free to do the investigation, but the board is their client. And so he can't very well say, well, you shouldn't have fired them. You shouldn't have fired Joe Paterno because he had to endorse what the board had already decided before it appointed him.
I'm not saying that the Free Report does not contain valuable information or that every one of Louis Freeh's conclusions is incorrect. However, to accept it as gospel, I think that has been called into serious question.
I had insisted on meeting with Louis Freeh to give him correct information, hoping that it would be a good report, that it would actually be helpful to the university. But what I learned later is that his report was essentially written by the time he met with me.
They didn't even interview the key witnesses. They didn't interview Mike McQueary, Gary Schultz. They got Graham Spanier 3 days before it was published.
Louis Freeh gathered some facts. We can't go through each and every one of the facts or assertions, but then he assigned motivations to people, including Paterno, which at best were unknowable and at worst might have been irresponsible.
Do you believe that Coach Paterno was a part of the conspiracy to conceal, to cover up the crimes at Penn State by Jerry Sandusky?
I do not, and I'm viewing this strictly on the evidence, not any kind of fealty to anybody. I did not find that evidence. He was one of the few people that did anything. He did come forward. He did report this to his supervisors, the head of the police department. And ultimately, he said it best. I didn't do enough. I should have done more.
It's football eve and the start of a new season.
Outside Beaver Stadium, where fans are already starting to show up for tonight's rally. Everybody is excited for a new season, a new day for the Nittany Lions, and ready to put the past behind them.
We camp out for the best seats that we can, and you get to actually feel like we are Penn State. That's how it feels when we're doing Nittanyville.
It was called Paternoville in 2005, and when all the news broke out and all the allegations and all that not so fun stuff came out, it was changed to Nittanyville this past spring.
We are excited to say you can have your opinions, you can have your judgments, but we're still going to cheer for our school.
A new era begins at Penn State University. The Nittany Lion football team takes the field with the goal of putting the Jerry Sandusky scandal behind them.
Penn State has confirmed the hiring of Patriots offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien as its head football coach. He must guide a program shrouded in uncertainty.
Bill O'Brien is the atmosphere here and perhaps is the ideal individual to try to lead Penn State. You could see the intensity, the power, the anger on their faces. For the first time in their history, Penn State will wear names on the back of uniforms.
A year ago at this time, Penn State was viewed as a pristine program. It all came crashing down with the severe sanctions handed out.
The NCAA is now allowing any current Penn State player to transfer immediately.
The $60 million fine, unprecedented.
The on-the-field product will take a big hit for a long, long time and may potentially never quite get back to its level.
The eyes of a university, the eyes of a community, and the eyes of a nation will be riveted upon them this afternoon at Beaver Stadium.
Penn State drops its opener, post-Sandusky, post-Paterno, to Ohio, 24-14.
They made physical mistakes, and it hurt them. I think you can capture the game for them in the opening drive. They went right down the field and fumbled it at the edge of the red zone.
It was a poor performance from the football team, and their schedule doesn't look like a lot of easy wins, if any.
There was a lot of sadness in my mind. I'm seeing the demise of great Penn State football. It was very sad for me. At my age, I'm seeing possibly the end. For me, there will probably not be another great hurrah. And so that's where I think I was reflecting on in the stadium. I was thinking about, will I ever see Penn State as a major power? Will they be going to bowl games? Will I live to see that again? It'll come back. That, as I say, will I ever see it? Hopefully I will.
Ficken will come on to try the field goal. It will be a 40-yarder. Anthony Farah, who would have been the place kicker, was one of the transfers. The field goal is no good. Ficken, who missed from 40, will try from 38. He may not get another shot. Sam Ficken has missed from 40 and 38. Again. Are you kidding? Just feel like the heart has been torn out of his chest.
You know, we were a very frustrated football team and coaching staff at that point. But, you know, the overall mood's not great when you lose on a last play like that.
We go cameras down right after stretch. Right? Get that shit down.
We missed 5 field goals. And when I say we, I mean that's, you know, we shouldn't have been in a position to where it came down to one guy.
The kicker always gets the blame. They should have scored 2 more touchdowns.
After that game, I was obviously pretty upset. Losing a game for your team kind of sucks.
You know, Coach O'Brien was like, listen, the kid may have missed 5 field goals, but he's going to win us a game by the end of the season. And that was in week 2, he said that.
Everyone said, hey, keep your head up. We're behind you 100%.
After that Virginia game, that was probably the light switch. They said, you know what? Nothing's going to stop us. It doesn't matter. We're going to overcome this. And they bonded again together, and they said, we're going to be all right. I knew the Monday after that Virginia game when they came back and they practiced really hard that day, I knew we had a chance. If we could win a game, we could get something going.
Blue bullet. Blue bullet. Blue bullet.
Pitch of the Zorn is to the edge.
We knew that we were going to play on TV every week because everybody wanted to just watch Penn State burn.
Back on the field. Out he goes! Second interception of the ball game. First night game of the season for Penn State. It was a Nittany Lion and his third touchdown. Touchdown! Penn State, Allen Robinson. Oh yeah! 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 Oh yeah!
This is really hard, sorry. Grooming is a process that pedophiles especially use to gradually get children used to trusting them, and gradually introducing touch.
And he put his hand on my leg while we were driving. My family never did that, so it was kind of weird, but I thought maybe that's what his family did. But it did kind of trip a little. Why is his hand there? This is weird.
Then they start to feel a little bit guilty, like, well, I should have said something last time. They're generally taught to obey adults.
Now relax. Now do the same thing, only do a little bit.
He just seemed like the all-natural father figure, like something that most kids wish that their dads did.
It's like having someone you really trust as a kid giving you poison, you know, in the term of affection, but calling it medicine. And Sandusky would select kids and provide that attention and provide that love. But it was a poison pill.
I thought maybe it'd be easier to kind of take myself out of the equation. There was numerous amount of times that I've actually tried.
It's an opportunity to throw out a rope to some kids, and if they grab hold, you know, they can be champions.
He really fooled everyone. You know, most of his behavior was really persuasive. He was a good actor.
Well, the simplest explanation in this is that Jerry Sandusky fooled us all, okay? The conspiracy theory is that there's a conspiracy.
Reading through the court testimony, I'm like, my God, this guy has got such access to kids, unfettered, unauthorized, individual access to kids. Everybody has their hair on fire over football, but nobody seems to have a raging, burning anger at the child welfare system.
It's almost like Jerry Sandusky and his crimes are beside the point.
When the scandal first hit, I will tell you that it was almost like everything came to a complete halt. People weren't coming in the door anymore. I think the town was really in shock. It was just unbelievable.
There was shock, awe, disappointment.
Our football deposits could be anywhere from $60,000 to $70,000 to $80,000, which helps carry us through the slower months. This year, going into next season, we only have $10,000 collected, and that probably won't change.
Well, during the past fall, our sales were down. On weekends, the people that used to come in for 35 years, all of a sudden weren't around.
If you look at Penn State like a brand, I mean, the brand took an incredible hit.
And this year was difficult. These sanctions will have a devastating effect for years to come. And it's so far away from the crimes of Jerry Sandusky. Economically, it's going to get worse. It's going to get much worse. Even I can see that. So.
In nickel mines, it was within 6 hours that representatives of the community spontaneously were going to offer words of compassion and forgiveness to the family of the offender.
All day long, my husband could not lift his head, and the tears just kept coming, and he actually used a dish towel to wipe the tears away. And he did that so often that he actually wore the skin off of his forehead. Henry was our Amish neighbor, and Henry just kept consoling him, comforting him, put his hand on his shoulder, just telling Chuck how much he loved him. He just, Roberts, we love you. We don't hold anything against you. And in those comforting words, I saw my husband look up into Henry's eyes. And as he did that, he said, "Thank you, Henry." And in that moment, that gave me the hope that someday he will come to a place where he can heal from what has happened today.
The burials of the Amish girls were planned for Thursday and Friday, and then the burial of the offender, Mr. Roberts, was planned for Saturday.
So here we were with our son, putting him to rest, and the first two parents to greet us that day are the parents that lost not just one, but two daughters at the hand of our son.
There are dozens and dozens of large news organizations with their RV vehicles and satellite dishes and gasoline generators to run their equipment. There were hundreds of journalists just mulling around in this rural mall, so to speak, at the crossroads, which had been blocked off by the police. And the story of forgiveness became the big story that sort of eclipsed the violence. How could the Amish respond with forgiveness? And then the Amish were baffled that everybody else was talking about forgiveness, because for them, forgiveness was just part of their way of life.
Then the Amish come and encircle us and surrounded the gravesite with 60 or 70 of them in a way that just felt like a covering around us. So here we are with all this sorrow, and yet feeling like there was a protection around us. So who can say that there's something that they cannot forgive? I think forgiveness is something that we choose.
If I had Coach O'Brien with me right now, the last thing we would be talking about is football and strategy. What we would be doing together right now is clearing our minds from all the stress, and what a greater place in which to do it. This is why I fish. It isn't just catching fish. It's the beauty that surrounds me. But now, Coach O'Brien was with me right now. I would be trying to get him into a fish, so for a moment, all of his problems would disappear.
Ladies and gentlemen, Penn State's head football coach, Bill O'Brien.
Had Coach O'Brien come in here under normal circumstances, with just the transition from the legend Joe Paterno to the new coach and the new chapter, that transition just in itself is very, very difficult. And here, in my view, Coach O'Brien comes in under these unbelievably incredible circumstances, and it takes him 2 games to get the team plugged in. That's Coach O'Brien opening that door to say, I need you guys to trust me. And they did.
Coach O'Brien literally inherited a bunch of guys who were just tired and worn out from what we had just gone through. And here's a guy who gave us respect and understood what we had gone through and leveled with us and was honest with us. And I think that we all just, we needed that. We needed somebody to just look at, hey, Coach, tell us what to do. He said, listen, I'm going to get us in the right direction. And, he knew what to do, and he said all the right things from day one.
There was no question that this was different than any place I had ever been. I felt this was one of the best college football jobs in the country, regardless of the situation.
With Coach O'Brien, there was music at practice. Guys had long hair. Guys could, grow out their beard. He didn't believe that those things had anything to do with football.
I've coached some guys that are the best to ever play their position in football. And Michael Motti was one of the best I've been around. Here's a guy that just played with a lot of grit, determination. He led by example. He led vocally.
The more we went through things together and the more he saw how I reacted to things, I think he would kind of see himself a lot in me. We'll sit in practice sometimes and he just kind of will lean over. He's like, man, I love this shit. I love it, man.
Joe Pa and Tom Osborne are very similar entities, right? And when that whole thing happened, I always thought, well, what if that was Dr. Tom?
Sandusky's a bad man, but that doesn't make Paterno a bad man or the rest of the people at Penn State bad people.
Last year before the game, I thought it was, kind of like, to me it was a kind of historic moment. Everyone praying on the field.
Yeah. I cried before that.
It was the most touched I've ever been in a sporting event.
Father God, there are a lot of little boys around the country today who are watching this game. And they're trying to figure out what the definition of manhood is all about. Father, this is it right here.
If you remember back when we played in Nebraska last year and they wanted to cancel the game, here's a platform to give these kids an opportunity to show that they're not animals and they do have a sensitivity to the victims. And then you wanted to take that away.
That week in Nebraska, I'll never forget it the rest of my life.
I pray that this game would be a training ground of what manhood looks like.
We had lived the tradition and everything, and by the values, and all of a sudden here's these people telling us that it all stood for nothing, and that we were child rapists, and now we're all this, and we had so now we were the people that represented everything that was bad and evil in the world.
People saw Nebraska's offensive running back coach get in the middle of that circle in a moment of silence and say a prayer. The most moving thing I've ever seen, and the nation saw it. And they saw it wasn't just football, but football was the vehicle.
lowers the shoulder, fumbles the ball in the end zone. It's loose and Nebraska recovers.
Freeze it right where the ball is. Take a look at it, and that's over the line.
The ruling on the field, a touchback stand.
Wow.
First and 10.
I'm not the kind of person who could ever move on past anything that's unresolved. And definitely not the kind of person who could move on past anything that is not fair and just. And in this particular situation, because my passion for Penn State is great, I can't move on. I can't move on until the truth comes out. And I do not believe we have heard the truth.
Our Board of Trustees made decisions to put the focus on Joe Paterno and Penn State football and the culture of Penn State football. And once they fired Joe, then people believed that Joe was guilty.
I'm just here, guys, to say that we need a change in leadership here at Penn State, and that we have to do it ourselves. And they'll keep fighting for their own survival. When you talk to them, it's
The Board of Trustees is trying to wipe out the legacy of Joe Paterno.
It's almost as if Joe Paterno never existed, as if he's been erased from history.
When the vote was taken, there were 4 or 5 of us emeritus trustees who had said nothing, because proper behavior for emeritus trustees these days is, if you have to be seen, okay, but don't talk. And I just felt I had to speak. I had to say some words to suggest slowing down. And so I did speak about the extent to which Joe Paterno, then and now, wasn't just loved, he was revered and had earned it. And I suggested that some thought be given to not being so rushed in taking action. But that's all that was said. And I was impolitely acknowledged. And Sermon told me, we're not going to drink that Kool-Aid.
Well, I'm coming to State College to attend tomorrow's board meeting. It's about a 4-hour ride. It's a bit of a hassle, but it's usually worth it. For them to see us, those of us who are not happy with the board. I want them to see me there. I want them to see that I'm there and I'm angry.
Thank you very much.
I just got a text from the board office that the secretary let me know I am going to be speaking at tomorrow's meeting. And my topic is remembering Joe Paterno 1 year later. It's been a year since he passed away.
Okay, Cecilia Mazzella, who we've heard from in September, is an alumna and is asked to speak to the remembrance of Joe Paterno on the occasion of the anniversary of his passing.
It has been 1 year since we sadly lost Joe Paterno. He left us abruptly, but his memory is as alive today as if he were among us. Off the football field, Joe sacrificed in so many ways to help build this university. In fact, Joe Paterno became the much respected face of Penn State. This didn't happen subtly or easily. It came from living one day at a time, doing the right thing, making the right choices, and caring deeply about his student athletes. The end of his life was filled with betrayal and upheaval. He deserved so much better. It is time for this university to properly honor his accomplishments and celebrate his life. I would like the remainder of my time to be spent in silence, specifically in Joe's memory.
Thank you.
Okay, Susan Dietrich, an alumna, also shared her perspectives in
Now that I've digested all this and really kind of took a page from Coach O'Brien, who said, you know what, we've got to move forward. All this other stuff is going to surface again somewhere. The truth will come out, and we all want to know what the truth is. The truth will come out about all this stuff. Let's just focus on how we bring this team and this program and this university back to the respect that we've earned.
Let's go. Hadegun Brown right. This is training camp. This ain't spring practice. You play wide. Give me Bryce Wilson. Fuck out of here.
We understand what happened here was horrible, and we'll do everything in our power to make sure it never happens again. But you're wasting a lot of breath if you sit there and just complain nonstop about what's happened to you. Change is hard. Change is very, very hard, and there will always be people out there that won't accept change, and not much I can do about that. All I can do is just help our football players and help our coaching staff move forward.
My first job out of college was playing football. My second job out of college was coaching football. I played long enough that I began to realize that our priorities, my priorities, are a little out of whack. It's like the lesson, life is hard, and teaching that to a young person and saying, that lesson is true, life is hard. And the sooner you learn that, the sooner you can accept that suffering is part of the deal and that we are going to experience hurt and pain. But what we do with that is critical. We can either transmit that or we can allow that to transform us.
The anxiety for me as a parent watching the games is agonizing because I just want the kids to just have fun and just do well and just stay healthy. You know, I'm really uptight. Michael realizes he's been hurt twice. You know, he's lost his season. I mean, they've been tough injuries. But he understands from that he could be one play away from the last play he ever plays.
You know the feeling immediately. It's just, I didn't really want to believe it. I was just come up on a blocker and I felt somebody just kind of took out my leg, you know, just somebody's body just went into my knee and my foot stayed still, but everything else was moving, so.
Player is down, it's Michael Maudie, guys, yep.
We fought so hard that season and we only had one more game. I'm saying, you know, I mean, hey, we got one more week. And I'm done. I mean, I was excited and
moving scene here on the field right now as Michael Maudie is carted off the Beaver Stadium turf.
That was a tough situation. My first opinion was a very long rehab process. Multiple surgeries. It was gonna be, you know, more than a year. Me and my dad had talked about it, and you know, it was like 4 a.m. You know, we were both at peace with the fact that I wasn't gonna play anymore. That was it, you know, I was just gonna hang it up. You know, people kept saying everything happens for a reason, and you know, I'm still trying to find that reason.
I've always felt that being president of Penn State was the best job in American higher education, and I still feel that way. I loved being around students. I did as many things as I could to interact with them. I was the faculty advisor for the Penn State Performing Magicians. I performed with the musical theater students, the Blue Band. I tried to be involved. after I was no longer president of Penn State, I didn't know what mode to be in personally. The media had portrayed me as one of the bad guys. But at the same time, I felt within myself, I've done nothing wrong. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I should not hide. I should get out. And what I discovered after I was brave enough to go out was that everywhere I went, it was wonderful. If I had to get a carton of milk at the grocery store, should have taken 5 or 10 minutes. It would take an hour and a half because it was like a receiving line. People coming up to me, strangers coming up to me, asking if they could give me hugs. If I ever feel depressed now, I just go to the grocery store. I grew up in the Chicago area in somewhat difficult family circumstances. I lost a lot of family in the Holocaust. My father escaped from Nazi Germany, and he had a very, very difficult life, very difficult life. He was very abusive to me, so I was beaten regularly. I've had 4 operations, reconstructive surgery to rebuild my body, my face. I wish they would have made me better looking coming out of it. But childhood was difficult. If I had ever heard a word about child abuse, sexual abuse, about anything criminal, I would have intervened. Never in a million years would I have allowed that to occur. Never.
Sometimes forgiveness can be offered to survivors as a kind of panacea. Very often, forgiveness is easy for people who haven't been through the experience to recommend. You know, like these easy fixes that are coming from people who have no idea what it's like inside. It's something that can add to the person's sense of self-blame. You know, if they're being told that forgiveness is where they should be and they're not at that point in their process, then it feels like heaping additional blame and shame on the person. You know, like that they're suffering now because they're just not, they're being stubborn and they're not willing to forgive.
My husband drove for 2 Amish builders, and he had mentioned to them that we wanted to put a sunroom on, and we wanted the Amish to frame it up and then have Charlie and Josh, finish it off. After everything happened, one of the builders called my husband and said, "Well, what about that sunroom your wife was talking about?" We just decided as a family to go to Disney on a cruise. And that wasn't something we really had the money to do, but it would make that first big holiday something new. It would make a new memory. So I said, go ahead and let them know that we'll save up the money maybe in 2 years, and then we'll build the room. That we won't be doing it now. And his response was, "Your wife needs her sunroom now." And he said, "Do you need the room to be bigger?" And I said, "Well, I'd like it to be bigger, but it doesn't need to be." And he said, "It's going to be 16 by 20. It is my precious, precious room.
Justice is a word that means fundamental fairness. It means equity. It may mean love. The other meaning of the word justice, though, is revenge. As a lawyer seeking justice, like most lawyers, we're under the received wisdom from thousands of years and multiple societies that the best way for resolving conflicts is to seek justice in the form of revenge, to retaliate in some respect. So if a person has been wronged, there needs to be some recompense from that person. But in the end, the ultimate goal of a litigating attorney is to get control of the gun.
The Amish faith focuses on the rejection of violence, of loving enemies, loving and accepting, forgiving those who persecute you. And one practical spin-off of that is their rejection of litigation, because litigation involves force.
And what scientists have found recently is that this area of the brain, known as the dorsal striatum and also the nucleus accumbens, is an area of the brain that also is activating when we're preparing to gratify our craving for justice. So we're biologically constructed to feel pleasure when we get justice in the form of revenge.
I remember my mother used to talk about, that bitterness or anger or for unforgiving spirit makes you sick.
At about 20 years into my legal practice, however, or 15 years, I started to see what I thought looked like addictive behavior within myself and within my clients. Almost a compulsive, willing to risk it all, to destroy my life, to destroy their lives, to destroy other people's lives, to act completely against self-interest just to get that feeling of having gotten justice.
I've never had a situation where I was more right and dumber for doing what I did. Because from a self-interest standpoint, this was idiotic.
The only cover-up was by Jerry Sandusky and Joe Paterno.
There's no
That's
evidence
why he
that
got
Joe
fired.
Paterno was part of a
Joe
cover-up.
Paterno got fired.
There's no
of course
evidence
he knew, but he knew damn well Sandusky was having naked showers with these boys.
That? That's an incredible charge.
That's why he got fired.
And I'm going to suffer for it probably for the rest of my life. I'll know I did the right thing, but from a career perspective, it was near suicidal.
I've always been somebody who has wanted truth to prevail and fairness and justice to prevail. And I couldn't bury this if my life depended on it. It hits me every day. I think about it every day. It's just in the core of my being.
A lot of people think or like to claim that they care about facts and they care about truth and they want justice and they want right versus wrong. But when it really comes down to it, no one is willing to put anything of their own on the line for that.
We have fallen for a trap that is, I believe, doomed Joe Paterno to eternal infamy because Joe did what he was supposed to do with the information he was given.
Do I believe that he was actively involved in a cover-up? No. I think Paterno should have tried to get to the bottom of it, should have wielded the considerable power he had. But now, even when Frank Fina says what he said, if that's anywhere, it's on page 11 of a sports section. It's not on the front page of the New York Times. To me, that seems like a significant thing, because let's be honest, although the crimes were terrible, Joe Paterno in the public mind is a central figure here. That's what gave the story much of its resonance. It seems to me that people like tidy conclusions.
Joe Paterno, in fact, did nothing.
It should be the death penalty. It should be immediately imposed.
And so, all right, here we have our conclusion. It looks like Joe Paterno had feet of clay. It looks like he failed the most important moral test of his life. Case closed. Goodbye. We move on.
God, I hate that term, move on. Move on? We're just going to do whatever travesty of justice that happens, that nature allows, and then when we realize it was wrong, we're just going to say, oh, well, too bad. Let's move on. Are you kidding me?
You had more information than Joe Paterno did, Mark. Wow. So why didn't you act? Why didn't you act, Mark?
You can't just take a story, reach a conclusion about one of the most significant figures of our lifetime in sports, and then when new evidence comes in, or perspective sets in over time, we're done with that. We're down the road. We're done with that. I just think that's wrong.
Channel 11's Courtney Brennan joins us live outside of the courthouse. So, Courtney, what's happening now?
Well, Darius, this is the moment we have all been waiting for. The entire nation is watching. Here it is, 45? 45 counts. 45 counts? 45 counts, only 2 not guilty. Okay. Jerry Sandusky was found guilty on 45 counts. 45 counts, he was found guilty. Only 2 not guilty counts of indecent assault.
As you heard, I came out the steps, gave Courtney the information to bring to you first, and the whole place was erupting. People were cheering.
Just absolute elation.
All I can say is thank God. Guilty, guilty, guilty. It's wonderful.
So the direct person to sue is Sandusky, right? But the lawyers won't limit it to Sandusky, so they're going to expand it to everybody that has a deep pocket around to make it worth their client going through the suffering that they're going to experience to win. Then you have all of the constituents in the community. They may be business owners, they just may be Penn Staters and football fans. And they are going to be suing the university and its trustees individually for malfeasance of some sort. Then you have those university officials that are in the midst of being prosecuted and or sued by the state. And then you have the state itself suing the NCAA. I mean, everywhere you look is justice seeking in the form of revenge now in Happy Valley.
You know, cynicism is a powerful force. You can seem to be tougher and somehow more journalistically upright if you reach the most cynical conclusion. But to me, the best journalism is the journalism with eyes wide open.
That Wisconsin game, it was cold, it was kind of snowing, it was what Penn State is all about.
It's the stately Nittany Lion, a symbol of our band. 2, 3, 4. Help to the lion. Go State!
Penn State's been so clean for so long that when the NCAA found a reason to punish them, they just beat them to death.
Even though it wasn't sold out, however many were there, it was still loud. We started out the game poorly. They were up 14-3 or 14-0 or something, and then we started doing something on offense. Winak ran for 180 yards. We held on, we came back. We held him in overtime, and then Sam Ficken, who had missed the 5 field goals and extra points, whatever he missed against Virginia, kicked the winning kick.
I don't ever want to ask myself the question, you know, why me? I'll never do that. But that's when I had some questions after that. I drove over to Pittsburgh and saw Dr. Bradley from the Steelers, and he took a look at me and did his examination, and he said, "Hey man, 8 months should be good." And I kept hearing him say that over and over. As soon as we get out of that office in Pittsburgh, we're saying, "Wait a minute now." Like, hey man, this is doable. I mean, I've done this before, and it's. He says I can play. He says it's going to be okay to play. Then, I'm going to play. But at that point, I was still fresh, so I had to just plant the whole seed over again, and I just had to let that thing take root. We have been training every day. I've done everything I could do as hard as I can to get myself prepared for this draft and put myself in a position to have an opportunity to play in the National Football League. And that's been a dream of mine since I was a kid.
It's 7-8.
Steelers got, I think, 7 picks.
What about the Ravens? What's the Ravens?
For like a short time.
No.
The earlier the better on Saturday.
We're playing Friday. Friday, baby.
That's what I'm hoping for.
So we'll see.
I'm just waiting. That's all I can do. And while I'm waiting, we'll be eating crawfish and we'll be hanging out, and it'll just be a good, relaxing weekend. Probably be relaxing after the phone call, but we'll see when that happens.
Your girlfriend's in town right now?
Mm-hmm. The whole family. That's all I really need. That's all I care about. As long as that phone rings.
If I could get on a high enough platform here in Happy Valley and stand out and with a speaker loud enough and say to everybody, "Forgive," and this all goes away, they would laugh at me. They would think that was the most preposterous thing in the world. But it is a choice.
Rosanna is one of the little girls that was in the schoolhouse that day, and she is still tube-fed and in a wheelchair. Every time I go to Rosanna's house, she'll either be, on the sofa or in her wheelchair. When she was young, I would hold her. Now she's 12, so I can't hold her in my lap anymore, but to sing to her and read to her.
Hello, anybody home?
It's just been an absolutely wonderful part of my life that I'm accepted into their home. That they willingly allow me to come in and be with Rosanna on Thursday nights and just be a part of her life. It became a real healing in my process and for them.
Some folks wonder why the school building was taken down. To bring young 7-year-olds, 8 and 9-year-olds who were part of that event back into that building would have been a violence in itself to those children. Tourists try to go to nickel mines and find out exactly where this school was, but today it's only a pasture. And 5 new trees have been planted there as natural reminders.
Unhappy Valley could stop at any time, demanding that the few people who made things wrong now make it right. They could say, we're going to be happy again because we want to be happy. They could say, we're going to be happy again because we're going to tap the resources of our vast community and our state and our alumni and everything else around us. We'll be more abundant by doing that.
My high school coach used to tell me this. He always said, "You leave the program in better shape than you found it." And that always kind of stuck with me. I never thought that I would be able to make an impact at a place like Penn State. This program was not built by one man, and this program sure as hell is not going to get torn down by one man.
In the beginning, I talked to so many people who have been through crises in their life of one sort or another, and they all said, you know, in the end, you'll be doing something even better and bigger and more important, and it will all be okay. And I doubted them. I'm still not convinced, but I'm getting there.
Wouldn't it just be wonderful if Free could say, gosh, I guess I made a lot of mistakes here. If the NCAA could say, gee, we made some wrong judgment calls. But people are very loath in high positions to say, I'm sorry, and I made a mistake.
With the benefit of hindsight, I wish I had done more. That's truth. That's honesty. Everybody's careful not to be honest. Everybody's carefully choosing their words.
In hindsight, I wish I could have done more. He stood up at a time when nobody else was standing up. Rather than say, aha, you knew something. I knew you knew something. I knew it was part of a cover-up. I think everybody should say, you know, looking back, I wish I would have done more.
Eventually, mark my words, there will be forgiveness. It will happen. And on that day, which won't be announced anywhere, people will have forgotten the past. They'll be living in the present, and at some point, they'll wake up and they'll go, I don't even remember what all the fighting was about. I'm in Happy Valley again, and today's a great day.
Scholarships reduced from 25 to 15 per year for a period of 4 years.
The world champs, the Baltimore Ravens.
Proud grandma.